Some of our planet's greatest crises are being met with billion-dollar technologies and global summits. But in the vast wilderness of Canada, a different kind of solution is taking hold. It's quiet. It's radical. And it involves an animal most of us have written off as a nuisance. For decades, Canada has been losing a war. Its wetlands, the lifeblood of its ecosystems, were vanishing. And every conventional weapon failed. But now, scientists are claiming that in just 5 years, they can reverse decades of collapse. Their secret weapon? They're not building machines. They're relocating hundreds of beavers into the heart of the decay. On the surface, it sounds like a quaint conservation project, but this is no rescue mission. This is one of the boldest ecological experiments ever attempted, a high-stakes gamble that a few furry engineers can succeed where our own best efforts have failed. So, how did a forgotten creature become our last, best hope? To find the answer, we have to unravel a crisis that pushed an entire nation to the brink and uncover the story of nature's most misunderstood architect. For centuries, Canada's wetlands were a continental treasure. Vast marshes, bogs, and fens that acted as the Earth's kidneys, filtering water, preventing floods, and storing immense amounts of carbon in their deep peat soils. They were nurseries for life, teeming with frogs, fish, birds, and moose. But over the last century, they began to disappear. In southern Canada alone, over 70% have vanished, wiped off the map by urban expansion, industrial agriculture, and aggressive drainage projects designed to make the land more useful. The consequences were catastrophic. Without these natural sponges, communities faced deeper droughts in summer and more devastating floods in spring. Drinking water grew dirtier. The web of life began to unravel. Species that depended on the wetlands, from dragonflies to moose, declined sharply. One report warned that Canada was on track to lose much of its freshwater biodiversity within a single generation. Worse, the drained peatlands began releasing their ancient carbon stores, turning these once vital climate protectors into massive climate polluters. Restoring them with human engineering would cost billions, a price too steep to pay. The situation seemed hopeless. The land was dying, and we were the cause. But as ecologists studied the decline, they noticed a strange pattern. In the few forgotten pockets where the land remained healthy and resilient, they found the same signature: a series of dams, built not by humans, but by an animal we had nearly driven to extinction. There was a time when the beaver was the defining force on the North American landscape. For millennia, their dams shaped rivers and created vast, fertile wetlands. But in the 1800s, their dense, waterproof fur became a currency. The fur trade exploded, and the beaver was hunted to near extinction. Their dams vanished, their wetlands dried up, and their critical role as a keystone species, a species on which the entire ecosystem depends, was forgotten. For decades, the beavers that remained were viewed as pests. Their dams flooded farmland, blocked culverts, and interfered with infrastructure. We spent millions to undo their work, convinced our concrete and steel were superior. But we were wrong. While our systems controlled water, they were lifeless. It was the beavers' messy engineering that created complexity, resilience, and biodiversity. Their dams slow water, allowing it to spread out and seep into the ground, recharging aquifers. They trap sediment and filter pollutants. They create a mosaic of ponds, marshes, and meadows that supports an explosion of life. This realization sparked a radical question among conservationists. If wild beavers could restore ecosystems by accident, what could they do if we deployed them on purpose? What if we placed them directly into Canada's dying wetlands and simply let them work? It began as a bold, almost audacious plan, a coordinated effort to relocate hundreds of beavers into carefully selected, degraded ecosystems. But the mission immediately ran into a wall of resistance, from people and from nature itself.
For generations, landowners had been taught that beavers were the enemy. The idea of intentionally introducing them was met with confusion and hostility. Public awareness campaigns and town hall meetings became the first battleground. Then came the logistical nightmare. Capturing, handling, and transporting these intelligent, territorial animals is a delicate science. Some had to be airlifted by helicopter into remote wilderness, a costly and complex operation. But the greatest challenge was the land itself. Many wetlands were too far gone, too dry, polluted, or devoid of the trees beavers need for food and building materials. Releasing them there would be a death sentence. Ecologists had to act as real estate agents for beavers, meticulously scouting locations that had a chance of supporting them. Even then, the beavers didn't always cooperate. Some abandoned their new homes. Others failed to build, succumbing to stress or wandering into conflict with nearby farms. For every success story, there were setbacks that threatened to derail the entire project. It seemed nature wasn't going to be fixed so easily. Facing failure, the teams didn't give up. They adapted. They realized they couldn't just drop beavers into a broken system. They had to meet them halfway. To solve the flooding conflicts, they deployed ingenious devices called beaver deceivers, pipe systems installed through dams that subtly control water levels without disturbing the beavers. It was a truce, brokered by engineering. In areas too degraded for beavers to start from scratch, scientists built beaver dam analogs, or BDAs, man-made starter dams that mimic the real thing. These structures gave the beavers a head start, encouraging them to stay and build. Crucially, they partnered with First Nations communities, whose traditional ecological knowledge recognized the beaver as a sacred engineer for millennia. Indigenous leaders helped select release sites and guide the reintroduction, blending modern science with ancient wisdom. And slowly, against all odds, it began to work. Within weeks of release, the beavers were transforming the landscape. Dry, cracked earth softened. Water, once rushing through sterile channels, pooled and spread, recharging the soil like a sponge. Dormant seeds sprouted. Insects returned, followed by frogs, birds, and fish. The change was so dramatic it was visible from space. Satellite images showed blooms of green radiating from the new beaver ponds. The sound returned to silent places, the croak of frogs, the splash of fish, the songs of birds. The ecosystem was rebooting. The impact set off a chain reaction, a cascade of renewal that reached far beyond the wetlands. The insects bred in beaver ponds fed growing populations of fish and birds. Those, in turn, supported predators like otters, foxes, and even bears. Animals not seen in these areas for years began to reappear. The benefits flowed downstream. Rivers ran clearer and cooler, protecting fish during heat waves. Riverbanks stabilized, reducing erosion. And then came the most stunning discovery of all. In an era of escalating climate disasters, beaver wetlands proved to be astonishingly resilient. The water-saturated landscapes acted as natural fire breaks, with satellite imagery showing green, beaver-managed valleys remaining untouched, while surrounding forests barren to the ground. They were creating climate-proof oases. So what does the future hold? Scientists now project that within the next 5 years, this movement could restore over 100,000 hectares of damaged land. These renewed wetlands will store billions of liters of water, buffering entire regions against drought and fire. They will sequester millions of tons of carbon, actively fighting climate change.
Canada's success has become a global blueprint. The Beaver Protocol is being studied for use in depleted landscapes from the American West to the threatened wetlands of Africa. The collapse of the world's wetlands is a crisis decades in the making. For years, we fought nature and failed. The solution, it turns out, wasn't to double down on our own ingenuity. It was to step back and trust the wisdom of a creature we almost erased from the earth.
It's a humbling reminder that sometimes the most sophisticated technology for healing the planet is life itself, and the most powerful solutions may not be waiting to be invented, but simply waiting to be remembered.